Bonjour, welcome. Ça va bien? So this is the kickoff. This is the pre-hangover Armani Caffè on a beautiful Monday. So we are going to talk about the future of media, and we've got 25 minutes. No. We're actually going to talk about old and new models. So I think we all know the old models, don't we? We've heard it time and time and time again. But let me give you a little anecdote. The lovely gentleman gave an introduction. I came to Cannes in 1995. It was the first time. And I was a kind of scrappy little junior joint managing director of a creative agency. We had a media agency in London. I now live in New York. I've lived in New York for 28 years. But we came and we stayed at the Column d'Or. And if you've ever been to the Hotel du Cat, you know that, not Hotel du Cat, the Column d'Or up in St. Paul-de-Vence. It's about an hour and 20 minutes away. Rachel, hey. It's an hour and 20 minutes. So I said, I thought we were going to Cannes. And the chairman of my agency said, dear boy, we only go to Cannes if we win. And we did win that year, and it was funny. Anyway, the old model was Cannes in 1995 was a little sleepy advertising festival. They had 5 competitions: best TV ad, best radio ad, best out of home, best cinema ad, and none of the hoopla. There was none of the real estate here. There were hardly any Americans came. It was a European festival, obviously being in France. There were some Brits. The Gutter Bar, which you may know near the Martinez, had about 30 or 40 people, all drunk, all British. And now it's like, 4,000 people from every country in the world. And America didn't come to Cannes. The new model, what can I tell you? I judged the first non-advertising competition, which was the Media Lions in 1999. I was the jury chair of the Titanium Lions, blah, 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 blah. I think there's 36 different juries, 36 different competitions. The real estate knows no bounds, does it? Google, actually, I ran a company called Naked. We did a naked conversation on the main stage. Actually, in the old days, it was really prestigious to get on the main stage. So we got on the main stage. And that year, it was about 2004 or something, 3 people from Google came. I think they have 250 people now. So that's the old and the new. So obviously the business has transformed. So let me introduce this amazing panel. Alexis to my left, Quantcast, based out of London. He'll talk a little bit about the new measurement model. Kelly is president of USA Today, Gannett, and she's based out of Washington, D.C. We've got international, D.C., London, God knows where I'm from, South Africa. And Vlad actually runs a measurement business, a firm, and we're talking about outcomes. So my first question to this wonderful panel, I'm going to start with Kelly, is what is the new... We don't need to worry about the old model, but you are a big publisher, but you're involved in sport. We have an amazing partnership on the Super Bowl each year. USA Today do the Great Edition. Tell us about the new model at Gannett. Tell us a little bit about the new publishing model. How are Gannett looking at the future?
Yeah, I think that's a great question for everyone here. I would say it is still in development. That's something that we are constantly looking at with a big focus on engagement. How do you better engage the audiences that you do have, as well as continual growth? Scale is still very, very important in this space, and finding new ways to engage audiences with content and experiences. So looking beyond just print, digital, but also engaging people in real life on events like this and all across the US for our business. And using all that information that you get across those platforms to inform what comes next. So a lot of experimentation and trying things to inform what comes next.
That's great, and we'll come back to some topics. We are going to inevitably talk about AI and what AI impact is going to have. I know that's going to be a big recurring theme. Vlad, we talked a lot about your platform and your measurement model, and it's something we really believe passionately at Canvas about outcomes. So tell us about the new model of attribution and modeling and measurement.
Sure. There's so much sea change happening right now in advertising that if you don't keep up, you're going to be reeling trying to keep up. And it's quite interesting. I think what we're seeing right now is a capitulation from the old guard, which has been reach and frequency and tonnage and CPM-oriented media, to a responsibility for outcomes. What do outcomes actually mean? Are outcomes media KPIs, right? Guaranteeing viewability, guaranteeing clicks, guaranteeing engagement? Or are outcomes accountable to the things that marketers actually give a damn about, which is, did the media, did the marketing actually influence business results? And what I think is going to be happening here, and I think that this isn't too much of a stretch, is marketers in the next 18 months, especially as identity continues to deprecate, are going to have a greater and greater responsibility to be able to illustrate the link between investment and real-world business metrics. And a lot of what we're doing in our business is specifically focusing in that sector.
Yeah, I love the conversation around the move to at Canvas. We've created a new spine to what we do, and it's all about an outcomes roadmap. And we're creating a new type of strategist, and it's called a data storyteller. I think we're awash with data, and obviously exactly what you say, the ultimate KPI is often the ultimate business KPI. So you kind of have to start with that, but you should end with that. And obviously everything in between, we can't throw the baby out the bathwater, but I think that is what the ultimate goal is, and I commend you. But I think this new world is, how do you connect the dots? I call it like Shakespeare when he was writing plays and putting them on. The play, if you've ever been to the Globe, they have a fake Globe in Southwark in London, and it's a bare stage. So there was a prologue. The prologue would turn up and say, now, in Midsummer Night's Dream, we are going to go to a fairy world. And, because you needed the context. So what is the data storyteller is like Shakespeare's prologue. How can you data tell all the way through the customer journey?
If I could add, typically when you talk about outcomes, you immediately think to lower funnel metrics, but the reality is, upper funnel metrics are what get you there. Upper funnel campaigns, investing in TV, sight, sound, motion, emotion, video is crucially important, but also one of the most challenging elements to tie to those types of things. And so what we're seeing is a lot of marketers, especially when the purse strings start tightening up, is they will slice off upper funnel media in order to kind of get to that drug of lower funnel ROAS. When the reality is you've bankrupted your entire approach, your entire strategy. I had a marketer tell me this once, and I'll pass it back. I thought this was super interesting.
No, I'd love Alexis to build on that.
Yeah,
and
please.
Certainly talk maybe about your data platform is looking at audiences in very unique new ways. So maybe build on it and tell us how you're helping marketeers in this crazy world.
So Kelly talked about audiences, Vlad talked about outcomes, and I feel like the challenge has preceded the opportunity to a certain extent in terms of we keep laying the track and driving the train as we go along. If we think about the old models, media mix modelling has made such a big comeback over the last year or so, with advertisers kind of leaning back onto that approach. And if we think about it, it's all of those signals that come from media that help us understand what's actually driving those real world outcomes. To a certain extent, I think we have to fall back on that. But also, Billy talked about it on the previous panel, it's about as good as the data that you put into that model that can help you make those decisions and understand what outcomes you actually should be optimising towards. Because a lot of what we've been doing over the last 30 years, I've been in media for 14, is measuring on the last touch. And I read an article from 10 years ago talking about the multi-touch attribution model. And I was like, you could copy and paste that word for word and put it into today's world, and the marketers have the same challenges. And from a Quantcast perspective, we're now trying to bring that into the fore in terms of not relying on that single signal of failure, to be honest, the single source of failure, which is the third-party cookie, which we've been so reliant on for the last 30 years, and moving much more towards a multi-signal approach where you don't have to rely on just one source. You should be able to say, my CTV ad has driven more performance than the display ad, that you can get every single metric attached to it, which is completely wrong in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we're touching on a couple of themes here which I'd like to build on. Certainly this notion, the arms race to the last action, has always credited Google. Google take credit for everything that sits above them. I think it's interesting, an analogy, I wrote an op-ed about it's the middle of the journey that we should all be really brutally, and it was a metaphor, because obviously historically you had the faith-based brands that were upper funnel and were based on a belief in brand and brand awareness and consideration, and they've obviously now long since started moving down the funnel, and they're looking for those lower funnel. But it is interesting, in my observation, all the low funnel brands that built their businesses essentially on CPAs and things like that desperately now need to build a brand. So where it all comes to, it goes to hell in a handbag, as they say, is in the middle of the journey. It's where obviously, if you like, certain techniques at the top move to the bottom, and vice versa. And measurement, attribution, we were talking about that. You can measure CPAs until you're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, is that really going to build your brand in the long term? What is your long-term brand value? So can I build on that a bit? Because obviously, again, bring Kelly back in. You've been a very traditional, well, you come as an incumbent, as in a company that's been around for many, many years, revered, but you've obviously embraced the digital age. How are you pulling those kind of lower funnel brands up and vice versa and joining the dots?
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you asked that. So about 5 years ago, we diversified our offerings and actually acquired a digital marketing services business, particularly for local advertisers who there's built-in demand, right? Everybody wants to focus on the bottom part of that funnel, so things like search, social, etc. But really incorporating that into the full portfolio that we have, and the strategy is very much full funnel, to your point of understanding truly what is the outcome that you're trying to create. And I think there's so much more opportunity for all of us to work together more. I think we've defaulted to very specific measurable things that we can deliver on and check that box and say we're valuable. And I think we should think about it differently. We talk a lot at all the many cans that I've been to do of all the opportunities for things that we all care about and share about, but we don't actually change the way that we work together. And we are all so talented and so passionate about the area. It's kind of interesting how we still stick in our boxes, right? I'm the publisher, you're the ad tech guys, you're the agency guy, right? But there really is an opportunity for all of us to work together. We all have the same focus on that outcome and really wanting to do great things for our partners, and it's that flywheel for all of us. So really focusing on making sure that we have a full funnel of solutions to support marketers, however they want to grow their business, helping inform them of how to grow their business, whether it's at the top building brand or all the way down at the bottom of driving sales, and owning those outcomes along with them.
Yeah, Alexis, let me bring you in because, again, a lot of your, I think, audience can be, creating the 21st century customer journey. So tell us a little bit about, the customer journey today.
So the connected journey that consumers go on today is very much different to what it was before. And to Kelly's point around bringing publishers together, tech together, I used to work in an agency, and it's very easy to let the tech do the work, right? It's first things first, I want an easy life, let's be honest. But that has almost taken away from the creativity that marketing can bring. The tech should be able to facilitate things. AI should make things a little bit easier. It shouldn't take away from our creativity in applying that and thinking outside the box. If that's taken care of in terms of the time spent actually delivering a media plan, we can spend more time as a group understanding what outcomes are, how do we get to those outcomes, so on and so forth. But everyone remembers the marketing funnel, right? Awareness, consideration, action. You go through that in a linear fashion. I don't think anyone here can say that that is the case anymore. You know, I could be watching my connected television, see an ad, and take an action straight away. That has previously been ignored, and that's what tech should be giving you the understanding as to, I should be able to deliver this experience to my consumer in the moment that they are going to be showing intent. And from a Quantcast perspective, it's understanding that real-time understanding of consumers' intent on the open web and being able to deliver that experience in the moment that the consumers are leaning into the media that they are consuming, whether it's on their phone, whether it's on the TV, whether it's on their laptop. And then you see the action off the back of it in a modelled fashion, as we talked about before.
So Vlad, interestingly, recently I had a long discussion with a client where I said, okay, we won't have any compensation, we'll all be results. So let's try this out. It was so-so. I mean, again, it comes back to how do you measure a KPI? What is the contribution? You know, we do a lot of advanced modeling, and media's contribution is relatively modest in the greater, you know, attribution, if you think about it. I mean, literally, cleanliness of your toilets could be a big KPI, to be honest, if you're a fast food company. But I make that as a joke, but I mean it really, you know. Return the phone call if you actually get a lead. That could be a great KPI. But what I wanted to ask you was that, you know, we've been leaning into this notion of, for certain clients who are kind of fanatically focused on a business result, it's okay, fine, I'll put my money where my mouth is. Let's get those measures in place. And, okay, let's make it, you know, compensation based on how, I mean, your model, your techniques and your company could be the nirvana to that, because ultimately it would be the attribution against, if you were a CPG brand, actual sales.
Yeah, you're right. And by the way, Alexis, you said something that's super important, which is, and I make this mistake all the time also, as I talk about things in terms of a funnel. The reality is consumers are not orderly, right? It's a nebula of signal that you get depending on what medium you particularly happen to fall in most with, and the way Gen Z communicates and consumes the world is totally different than the way millennials consume the world, which is totally different than the way every other generation does it as well. So because we're so fragmented and because we're investing in so many disparate sources as marketers, how do we ultimately create that understanding of media's impact on driving your business? So, you know, if you were to attribute and say, I need all my media to drive to sales, you would be making a mistake, right? So what we have to do is start figuring out together, how do we attribute brand equity building? How do we attribute attention? How do we attribute brand safety and quality content that you would get on Gannett properties to their impact on driving consumers through that experience that ultimately results in a purchase, right? And what's really interesting in some of the studies that we've been doing is, let's take attention as a metric, because it's the sexy one right now that everyone's investing in. There's the Adelaides and Double Verifieds of the world, Lumens, and so on. There are instances in which attention has a super high correlation to a business result, and instances where you have a very high attention score, and it basically is empty calories. It has no nutritional value. And that's really interesting to me, and I think that's something that marketers should be paying attention to as well. Because just because you're generating that KPI, does that KPI have a correlation downrange to that business result?
I love that soundbite. Calories, empty calories. Yeah, Alexis.
A show of hands, how many people have had their other half send them a link to buy something? Yeah, like, come on. I mean, that's like a funny point that you talked about, the media mix and the groups of audiences you should be targeting versus the individual. And that's obviously going to become more important as cookies deprecate, as signals deprecate, like mix of signals. You should be delivering models of audiences that exhibit certain behaviours and interests. And it is quite funny, because we've seen that insight where a baby care product, we're seeing more males buy the baby care product, and we're thinking, why is that? And then we obviously saw it was through referrer traffic from WhatsApp, where people actually just go in, buy this please, and you go away and buy it.
Yeah, no, that's really wise, because again, all those conventional audience identifications could be rather complex, audience much more complex. Okay, we've got 2 more topics, and we've got to talk about AI because otherwise we'll be sent back on the next plane to oblivion. No, but it is obviously a really interesting. So at Canvas, we've lent in. Clearly, we're applying it in the media sphere, at the performance end, programmatic end. I mean, it's been invisible, but it's been a part of our lives for many years as agencies and obviously publishers. But actually, interestingly, we've done a number of summits, with a number of partnerships. We've actually created a cross-discipline group, and we're sponsoring about 12 experiments, maybe too many, but I'd rather do more and fail quickly. But I kind of put it into there's hygiene, there's hubs, and there's hero. And a lot of the application of AI will be hygiene. It will be kind of invisible. It'll be about, invisible in trading, invisible in applications of data, in driving efficiency, converting low value work into high value work. Hubs are really the applications themselves. How do we make them interoperable so they become easy and intuitive? It's the blink, isn't it? You've got to use the damn stuff. So I've encouraged everyone. I'm very careful about our application to clients because of legal issues. But what I'm saying is, literally in your everyday life, use as many of these as possible. Have fun with them. And then the hero stuff is going to be the stuff that, may win an award. It's going to be kind of nice, shiny, objecty stuff. So that's always interesting. But I wanted to ask Kelly, I'd love obviously your perspective for a large corporation. You've got about 150 people reporting to you. I'm sure there's multiple thousands in the Gannett family overall. How are you applying it? What are the kind of experiments you're doing? But I have a little addendum, which we talked about. The Wall Street Journal recently, or the Dow Jones Group, News Corp, did a deal with OpenAI, I believe, and it was in the $200+ million. So they've taken the cash. And then, in contrast, New York Times is essentially in a lawsuit. Yeah. So you've got two kind of, you think, these are kind of similar models, New York Times Group versus, but diametrically opposite. How are you approaching that?
No, I love that you highlighted that. I think because it's one of the things that came up on the earlier panel too, the importance of the quality of the data and the management of the data, and I'm excited that there is a conversation now happening between AI companies and content producers like Dow Jones Group, etc., that create content to inform those models. I wonder about does the end user care? I think it's a question that we don't actually talk about very much, that we're very much focused on, as consumers, looking at the performance angle of AI, which I think is important, the experimentation. Are people thinking about what is the data, what is the quality of the data that is informing this, that helps inform the decisions that I'm making with the AI? So it's glad that it's happening, but to your question, it is definitely a scale of, do we verify and enter into a formal partnership, of which obviously there's monetary exchange, or the other end, do you force it with a lawsuit? So if it's not about the money, it's always about the money.
It's always about the money.
It's always about the money.
Tough ego and greed. It's all about the money.
But I do think it's something that we should all be thinking about too, is like, how sustainable is that, right? So 250 million, that's a lot of money, but it's capped there. What happens after that? And is the content that is informing it going to be enough that you're continually creating to make the AI better? And will you see that value back? It's a question. Where Gannett is on that scale.
Yeah. So we're not going to have your head of corporate comms is not going to have a little kitten, because you say, well, if it was 270, you might consider it. No, it's interesting, and you kind of get the different psychographic of the New York Times and versus a pragmatic. I think the Murdoch family still utterly pragmatic, and I think they think, well, maybe 250 million isn't the game. It's actually, can we collaborate? I mean, supposedly they're going to have all these partnerships versus there's an adversarial. If we're going to sue you, if you take our IP. So
Yes.
yeah, I think it's a great one. It's playing out right in front of our eyes, and it's kind of interesting how it's going to affect the media industry, how it's going to affect brands, how it's going to affect.
I think there's a shared intention of making AI great. Like I don't think there's anybody here that would say, oh, we want to see AI fail, we want to see it have a crappy experience, we want it to no, nobody does. It's a question of okay, how do we do that together, and how do we make sure that we're all being supported for it?
Vlad, AI, come on.
So, what I find most exciting about its application to the advertising industry is the fact that it never really gets tired, right? So when you think about, let's example by proxy, AI and its application, for example, with radiology, it doesn't get tired. AI is capable of noticing small nuances in the detail of pictures that otherwise you're relying on the human being to do. Right now, it feels a little bit scary because it's not as accurate as it could be, but it's not a stretch of the imagination to see in the next decade or so, or if not sooner, truthfully, that AI replaces the need for a radiologist or enables a radiologist to work that much more effectively. Much in the same way in advertising, we're dealing with loads and loads and loads of data that it requires something beyond a human being's capacity in order to be able to crunch together, right? And so if you have this triad between MMM, attribution, and measurement, and you have gobs of data underlying each of those to be able to figure out the through lines, the non-obvious facts, is going to be nothing short of revolutionary for us as marketers, as agencies, as brands, as tech providers, and so on, to be able to ensure that I used the term nebula earlier, the nebula that we exist within, which is advertising, that old adage of, I know 50% of my advertising works, but I just don't know which half, is going to start to be answered.
Very wise words. Okay, so we're in the final stretch. You'll be relieved. I have been very passionate about collaboration, and of course it's one of these massively abused terms, but I think a DNA in any person that you want to hire is within your own organization, because it's, everything's been atomized. I mean, disciplines have been atomized, the hyper-specialization. But I've been particularly passionate about the relationship that we, let's say, Canvas have with our brands and our clients, the ecosystem that we create there, but also we create with our partners, and I do call them partners. The word I most hate, I think it's vendor.
Thanks, Paul.
When
someone, we'll have a vendor meet. What is a vendor? Let's go back. No, it's partners. So let's finish on a note. It's been great collaborating on this panel. We did a number of calls. We've collaborated a lot with Gannett, but I hope we collaborate in future. And I think it is all about that collaboration. But just some finishing words on, what does it take to really collaborate well? Would you, couple of, thoughts and ideas that are in the EQ and the IQ of collaboration. So let me start with Vlad first.
So collaboration, especially in this new dawn that we're in, to me says doing the things that aren't necessarily easy, that makes you, enables you to go home at 5 o'clock. It's the stuff that is hard that you work a little bit much more efficient down the line. Otherwise, you're going to continue defaulting to the things you've been doing. And there's a saying someone once told me that I've always loved, which is, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And so this new dawn of collaboration, I think the key here is challenge the way you've always done things.
Kelly?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's one of the things that we all probably complain about is oh, you brought this to us too late. You did all the decisioning. Oh, man. What if we actually, to your point, change the way that we actually do things and start together at the beginning? How do we actually think about something and create something and understand what the collective we are trying to achieve? And I think taking that risk feels scary for some, that they want to have more control of the creation of the idea, the execution of the strategy, all those things. But is it possible to change that model where we start together in the beginning to say we collectively own the outcome? Are we comfortable with that? And now let's build something together. I don't think it has to be scary.
Alexis?
Vlad has to send me the quote because I lost but that was a very good quote.
Thanks, man.
We talked about the invisibility of AI and finding a balance to make things visible, as in when you log into a platform, how many times you've gone in and thought, why? And that is a fundamental part of that collaboration piece. Tech should be the last player in that because it isn't a person, and people bring more creative and solutions-oriented kind of results and ideas that can actually come into good practice. So from a collaboration perspective, all the results I had when I used to work agency side would always be with the ideas that come from people, not the tech. The tech is the final piece in the puzzle. And things like dynamic creative, things like the DSP that you use, the data that fuels that, the AI that then can go away and optimize that for you should be the last piece. So I think that's probably...
Well, listen, thank you so much for being such an attentive audience. Thank you to Brand Innovators. You've got this most amazing program. Thank you for this 4-star panel. I've lived by a motto, which actually is also Canvas's motto. It's challenge the comfortable. We all live in a very uncomfortable age. Being comfortable being uncomfortable is what Can is all about. If by the end of Friday you haven't kind of felt uncomfortable, not, you know, the 2 o'clock last, I'll have one more drink. I mean, you know, really, this is what this festival is actually about. It is about getting outside your comfort zone, seeing points of view that you don't necessarily 100% agree with. So I'll leave you on that note. Challenge the comfortable. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.